welcome to the podcast. My name is 3 Point Spanish King, and today we've got James Butler, always our English friend. If there's an English test match going, we will call James, and he takes the call always. So we thank James on that. But anyway, the fifth test match between England and India was underway, and England have won this pretty easily. I think that's the word we're using a lot when describing England. They're winning these easily, these very tough chases. England decided to bowl, James. They won the toss because they do like chasing, and didn't quite work out. India made 416. And we were saying earlier, geez, that's a horrible mistake. Led by a credible innings of Rishabh Pant, who made 146, and Ravi Jadeja, who made 106. Thoughts on the decision and the innings from India, James?
No surprise, really, that England found themselves batting second. They seem to want to do that these days. I thought India played well, actually. It seems to be a common trend, I think, in all the test matches this summer so far, that the new ball has had a big part to play. Wickets have fallen early. It's been hard to bat in those first sort of 20, 30 overs. And then once the ball gets older, then that's when the runs are scored. We saw New Zealand doing the same with Mitchell. And we've seen England doing the same thing throughout the summer. India did exactly the same, didn't they? Rishabh Pant was the man that came in alongside Jadeja, both scored centuries. Pant is just box office. I just love watching him play. Jadeja's not far behind him, and obviously a total 400 plus was good. I thought England lost their way with the bowling towards the tail, bowling short, and that Stuart brought over towards Jasprit Bumrah, where they took 35 off it, India. You kind of feared the worst at that stage because England seemed to have lost the plot a little bit. But obviously, fullness of time, it didn't cost them too much. But I think India, after posting 416, would have been reasonably happy with life.
I think they would have been. Well, you hit the nail on the head with bringing up Mitchell and Blundell. Because India were in all sorts of trouble, 5 for 98. James Anderson, fantastic again in the first innings. But as you said, it's a bit like the same New Zealand Test series. Two players got under England's nerve, got in under their skin. They attacked their bowlers, albeit except Anderson, who never gets attacked. And England just couldn't find a way to get them out until the damage was done. As we said, you said Pant was box office. He was unbelievable. Smashed 146 on 111 balls, 4 sixes, 19 boundaries. And Jadeja chipped in, played an undercard, considering he made 100. That's how good Rishabh Pant was. But it seems to be a mental lapse with England with its bowling, trying to get out a lower order, James. As you just said, Mitchell, Blundell made all those centuries. Got under England's skin. Is there a mental problem with England regarding that? Because that's now happened in two separate series where they've had a very good advantage, 5 down, but cannot seem to get out the next batsman, and they go on to make runs.
Like I said, I think it's just the ball. It gets easier to bat.
Yeah.
It suddenly goes from being ball on top and the bowling side, whether it's England or the tourists on top and looking like they're going to take a wicket, to all of a sudden the wicket flattens down, the ball sort of stops doing anything, and it becomes far more batting friendly. And you're playing Test cricket, and the batsmen know what they're doing, and they're able to actually make the most of that. Mitchell, Blundell did that. Pant, Jadeja did that, and to different degrees at various stages. I think England's middle order have done the same thing. Bairstow's possibly benefit from that as well. So I think it's just the way that cricket has gone this summer, with the ball, the duke ball's been a problem, going through the handcuffs and or not going through the handcuffs, and we've got to reach the stage where those handcuffs need sponsoring and an advertising logo putting on them, because they're seen more than probably England's openers at times. And my biggest thought, I would go back to it, was England bowling. Once 7 wickets are down, England seemed to suddenly change tack and bowl short. It worked in the second innings against India, which we'll come to in a second. But in the first innings, and often against New Zealand, they suddenly start leaking loads of runs. Bumrah is the sort of person, he's not a batsman. He's the sort of person, he shuts his eyes, he swings. if it's a Yorker or if it's a good ball that's going to hit the top of the off bail, he's going to struggle with that as much as the top order batsman is. If it's a short ball, his eyes light up, he has a swing. And it comes off sometimes for Jasprit and some of the lower order. And England just seem to lose their train of thought, their discipline when it comes to that. New Zealand did it against England in one of the chases at Trent Bridge. But I think England need to maybe sit down and work out how they're going to bowl at tail enders. Because like I say, if it's a good ball against a Virat Kohli, it's a good ball against a Jasprit Bumrah. And to be honest, you talk about picking sides. If you're going to pick a team for England and you're looking at the bowlers and you try to pick the best bowlers to play, you could take anybody out of county cricket and they can bowl a bouncer. It's not the hardest thing in the world to do. Use your skills and actually bowl the team out properly. And I thought India recovered well to get to 416. I thought they did really well. The lower order Waggles and Jadeja and especially Pant were exceptional.
Just before I go on, I do apologise for my black screen. I've got a comment saying that there is a black screen. I am trying to fix that problem. So sorry if you're seeing that, and no disrespect to James.
But I can see you.
Okay, I've got a couple of comments out. I've got a black screen.
I mean, to be honest, anybody that's seeing a black screen, it's better than Lucas's face, to be fair.
That's right. Exactly. So apologies up front for that. To the bowling side of England, once again, we seem to talk about this guy every week, James. James Anderson, 5 wickets, 5 for 60, average of 12, economy rate of 2.75. Unbelievable once again at age 39.
In English conditions particularly, but anywhere in the world, he is an outstanding bowler. He's only well on his way to getting up to 700 Test wickets now. You wouldn't put him past him going. I mean, I think Murali's probably a little bit too far ahead of him, but I think Shane Warne's tally's achievable for him. And he's just absolute class, isn't he? He knows exactly what he's doing with the ball. You watch him and he sets batsmen up. He sends the ball across them. He sends the ball across them, and all of a sudden one nips back in and they're playing down a different line. He just knows exactly what he's doing. He's got such good control. You see the slow-mos, the ball coming out of his hand and the seam position, everything. He just knows exactly what he's doing. I do think with Jimmy, there doesn't seem to be any sign of him getting, his powers dwindling. I do think with Stuart Broad, there are signs that his powers are dwindling slightly. And that's not to knock him. I'd still play him in the series against South Africa. But I just think there is maybe just a little bit of an indication that Stuart Broad is going down a notch. But you're going down a notch from being a great. So you're not going down to somebody that's awful. But I do think there are signs that maybe his powers are starting to weaken a little bit. But Jimmy Anderson just shows no sign of stopping. He's incredible. Looks like Lucas has lost us.
Oh, there we go. Okay.
There he is.
So response of 416 by India in their first innings. Now, England came out in their first innings. And once again, James, their front three, that's a football term, that. Their front three did not go anywhere. Alex Les fell cheaply. Zach Crawley, Ollie Pope fell cheaply. And it was once again down to Root and Bairstow. And just really seemed England was in trouble throughout this test match. Siraj was fantastic with the ball. Your thoughts on the England's first innings?
Yeah, I mean, repeat again, the ball against the top three. It's hard place to bat in England in the top three, and the ball is doing a bit more for the new balls, doing a bit more for the bowlers. I mean, Rooty, I don't think actually played very well by his standards in the first innings. He kind of fashioned a 31 rather than stroked a 31, but that's the hallmark of the great players. Sometimes, you're not always going to walk to the middle and everything pings off the middle straight away. And you find a way to, at least forge a partnership with somebody and play your part in setting some kind of total. And that's what Rooty did in that first innings. But you look at Bairstow. Bairstow is in the form of his life. I've watched him since he was, mid-teens, and watched him coming through the academy. And him and Root were always kind of earmarked to be certainly Yorkshire players, with the potential of going on and playing for England. Whether anybody actually at that stage thought they would go on and quite do what they're doing, because they're breaking records. Both have averaged around about 100 this summer so far. Root in the series, if you go back to last year, averaged 105, I think, in the series. Just incredible stuff. But Bairstow's twin hundreds in this match, just top an insane last 3 games. You know, he had a quiet first test against New Zealand, century in the second innings at Trent Bridge to win the game for England. He then joined sort of century in the first innings and then joined Root in taking England home at Headingley. And then there's obviously put back-to-back centuries in this game. And if you take Bairstow's contribution out of the England batting, England would not have won this test match. He's been absolutely vital for them and playing with huge confidence, but he's playing with his brain. You know, he's talking about being freed up and just enjoying it, but there is calculated brilliance there. You see Stokes, who I think has gone. I saw somebody said the other day that Stokes isn't making runs; he's trying to make a statement. It's not quite working because I think with Stokes, he's better than he's showing at the moment. He's just coming out to try and slog, and he's better than a slogger. Whereas Bairstow, Stokes is going aerial. Bairstow's going along the grounds. Bairstow's recognizing that they're fast outfields. Bairstow's recognizing that there's plenty of gaps created in the field when you get on top of a bowling attack. He knows when to pull his horns in and to defend, and then he knows when to attack. And he's just been absolutely incredible the last 3 test matches, and this one has been no exception. Not many people in Test cricket score centuries or 4 centuries in 3 test matches. Not many people score 2 centuries in the same match. And he's just in incredible vein of form, and he's been responsible for England winning the test match. And if you go back through the last 4 matches, Lucas, it was chases of 290, 290, 260 or something against New Zealand, somewhere in that region. And at this chase of 378 against India. And it's been Root and Bairstow that have been the guys that have won it. You can talk all you like about Bazball and positive mental attitudes and all this kind of stuff, but without Root and Bairstow, Root's century at Lords was the innings that took England home in the first test match. Bairstow's century at Trent Bridge took England home at Nottingham. Root and Bairstow together took England home at Headingley, and Root and Bairstow together with a double century partnership take England home in this game at Edgbaston against India. So without those two have been absolutely exceptional.
As you said, Johnny Bairstow was fantastic. Well, it was not just a series; it was in New Zealand, as you pointed out. India had their second innings, and England had to bowl extremely well, James, just to get back into this game. Unfortunately, India got off to a little bit of a flying start. They made quick runs. Pujara was a nonsense, as he always is in these kind of tricky innings, making a 66. Richard Pant, 57. But a good fight by the England bowlers, especially Ben Stokes, James, really got England back into this game. An unlikely here, and we know Ben Stokes is capable of the ball, but it wasn't James Anderson, it wasn't a Stuart Broad, it was Ben Stokes himself. He didn't bowl that many overs in the first innings.
I just to go back to the first bit about India's batting, I felt that they were quite naive yesterday, day 4. You have to look at the bigger picture. I mean, they knew that England were going to try and chase down anything they got set, but trying to chase down and actually chasing down is a different kettle of fish. And India had the ability in that second innings to basically bat England out of the game. They started, was it 138 for 3? They started on day 4. I was commentating yesterday, and Pant at the crease with Pujara. Pujara is the sort of person that can bat days on end. Rishabh Pant played quite a restrained innings for Rishabh Pant in the second innings. But you still got Shreyas Iyer, you still got Jadeja, you still got Shardul Thakur to come in. Shami and Bumrah have shown that they can score runs. So there was a potential there. India finished their second innings on 245 all out. Now, even if that had been 345 or 350, and you're setting England then 450 to win a test match, 500 to win a test match, with time a factor as well. You're making it very hard for them. And India were 2-1 up going into this tail end test match, this carried over test match, and they could have actually cemented the draw on day 4 by batting England out of the game entirely. and they failed to do that. And it wasn't a bad batting track. They played some poor shots, and there was some bad selections by India there. Some good bowling as well. You mentioned Stokes. I think he ran in and bowled very nicely. But I think India missed a big trick on day 4. They should have batted England completely out of the equation, and they didn't do that.
Yeah, good fight as if by Ben Stokes. Picked up 4 wickets, 4 for 33. Was fantastic. Now England's second innings, a very tough. We know they've been chasing well against Zealand, but this was another level. But it's just amazing just how they did this with absolute ease. We mentioned this in the last Test match against New Zealand, how they chased down that target with ease as well. They did this very, very comfortably. And out of all people, Zach Crawley, Alex Lee's got a tremendous start. They made I think it was 107 partnership. Really laid the foundation. Ollie Pope got a duck, which is good chasing when you do it easily. But Joe Root and Johnny Bairstow never really looked troubled in this. They were absolutely fantastic. I know Joe Root played here and there, so did Johnny Bairstow. But apart from that, there was no chances. Pritchard Punt dropped the catch down the leg side of Murray, dropped the catch. Very tough challenges, but no clear-cut dollies. Just indicate how good batting they actually were.
I think Vihari's chance, he should have taken that. But Rishabh Pants would have been a world-class catch down the leg side if he'd taken that. It would have, sort of 1 out of every 100 kind of that sticks, isn't it? So nothing too dramatic against him for that. But I think, I'm coming to Root and Bairstow in a second, but I thought Lees and Crawley, considering both of those were under a little bit of pressure. Alex Lee's probably under slightly less pressure than Zach Crawley, because Crawley was the one that's got the crosshairs on him all the way through the summer. And I know it was only 46 that he scored, but I thought Crawley in that second dig, he put a lot of shots away. He didn't play that expansive booming cover drive. He left a lot more cautiously outside of the off stump. He was a lot more disciplined, and there's good signs there. He looks like he's finally, the penny might be dropping and he might be learning a little bit. And if hopefully he sits down after a few beers tonight, because there'll be some celebrations, I'm sure, in that England team. But and
that should be,
and thinks it through, that how he got to 46 and how he managed to face 76 balls, see off the new ball, and how he went about that. That's his blueprint to actually go on now into the South African series. I think both Lees and Crawley showed enough in that second dig to give them at least another Test match together. Thought Lees was brilliant. His bat looked 10 foot wide through most of that innings, and he was incredibly unlucky that Root ran him out, because I thought, I'd actually just said on commentary, this is Lees' opportunity now to really notch a big score and ink his name into that score team sheet. But Rooty came out and ran Lees out, and I think then Root had to really grit his teeth and make sure he saw England home, because I think he felt a bit guilty for running out his former Yorkshire teammate. But going on to Root, but I mean, before that, if you actually think about that second innings, as you say, really comfortable chase in the end, 378. It was at a canter. There were only about 3 overs where 3 wickets fell. England went from being 107 for none to 109 for 3 between overs 21.4 to 24.1. So apart from that little period, that 10 minutes, either side of the break, I think it was, England didn't lose a wicket in the entirety of the rest of the innings. Root came in 142 not out, Bairstow 114 not out, just finished off a superb first half of the Test summer for those two. Bairstow just looks like he can't do anything wrong at the minute. When he hits the ball, there's a shot towards the end today where he smashed it back past Siraj. And if that had actually hit anybody, that would have caused them serious grief, because that was smashed back at them. Root was just in his imperious form. Root's now got to the stage, because there was going back a few years with Rooty, there was a period where all anybody talked about was his conversion rate, 50 to 100. Oh, he doesn't convert, it doesn't go big enough. Nowadays, when he gets in, it's almost inevitable. He gets to 30 or 40.
That and you think, dead now.
Yeah, but it almost gets to 40. It's almost inevitable he's going to get 100. And and now he makes them big hundreds. He doesn't just settle for 100. He gets 150 or 200.
Yeah, that was the huge criticism of Joe Root. when you get to compared to Steve Smith, Collie, look at them, their conversion rate's absolutely fantastic. And that was the only 1 week, and he's fixed that up in absolutely $1 million.
I saw a stat the other day. I think
he's the world's batsman, James. He's the world's best batsman.
By a long way as well, I think, in Test cricket, by a long way. I mean, he scored something like about 12 or 14 centuries since Smith, Coley, or Williamson got one.
Yeah. So the other three are falling off the cliff. That's painful for me to hear that about Steve Smith, but it's true. Joe Root is what Steve Smith did to England in 2019. He's having if you want to call it the Don Bradman series, but this isn't just one series, James. This is against New Zealand. Yeah. I make fun of this a lot, albeit except for in Australia. That's probably his only smudge. Last 2 years he didn't do in Australia. But
to be fair, even in Australia when England got battered, the first 2 Test matches, he should have probably got 100 at least one of those, and he did score runs there, just didn't get the 3 figures. And we put so much stock in 3 figures. 99 failure, 100 us massive success, 1 run difference.
But
I think Rooty has actually probably benefited from. I heard Bairstow being interviewed after the match today, and they were talking about his renaissance kind of thing as a cricketer and this incredible summer that he's having. And it's quite illuminating, I think. There's one, I don't know if many people will have noticed it, but one little sort of like throwaway comment about the bubbles and how hard he found the bubbles, the COVID bubbles. That he said, I'm not the sort of person that can sit in my hotel room and play computer games for hours on end. He's more active than that. He likes to get out. He likes to do stuff. Some people, I think, a Joe Root, a COVID bubble, I think, is actually putting him in his elements. He's on a cricket trip. He's thinking about cricket. He's shadow batting like a Steve Smith, shadow batting in his bedroom, and then he goes to the cricket grounds. That to him is Christmas. Whereas for Johnny Bairstow, and I know both of these guys, Root is a cricket badger. Root thinks about cricket 24/7. He loves it. He is immersed in the game. He thinks about nothing else. When he's out there batting, that is basically his home. He absolutely loves to play cricket. Bairstow's a different person. Both are really nice guys, but Bairstow's a different person. And he is somebody that when he gets away from the cricket fields, he shelves cricket and he watches other sports. He listens to music. He goes out. He does other things. Cricket is not important to Johnny Bairstow once he's left the cricket ground. And so he's made differently. And therefore, you put Root into a COVID bubble in a cricket atmosphere next to a test ground. He's in his element. Bairstow can't think of anything worse because he is not in his element. He just wants to be home near friends and family and doing stuff and being elsewhere. So I can quite easily see why Bairstow's had a ropey 2 years, because the bubbles have not suited Bairstow's personality. He's now out of the bubbles. He's been given a set role in the side rather than being messed about. And just watch him flourish. He's just been amazing. It's been glorious to watch him play.
Absolutely, indeed. Viet Kumar said, hello, guys. Hello, Viet. Sorry for the pronunciation. I'll get that wrong. Now, what I like to do is mention player ratings. But unfortunately, James, I've actually lost track of who played in the first game, who played in the second. I've completely lost track because it was not because it was a year ago, because I just don't remember who played.
I'll tell you what, mate. They did on the TV coverage over here. I don't know if you saw the same coverage as we do, but because you're on the other side of the world, they showed like a montage in one of the rain breaks earlier on in the Test match. They showed a montage of the Test series so far. And obviously all the other games were last year, and it brought it home to me, Lucas. We had Rory Burns, Dom Sibley playing in that series. We had Chris Rokes was playing.
Yes,
we had the faces were different. KL Josh Butler behind the stumps. KL Rahul and Rohit Sharma for India. It just brought it home to me when I was watching that montage, and I only saw it once and I didn't have the sound on, but it felt like years ago, because there was, England have played so much cricket between then and now. The winter was packed. We had, it's been wall to wall cricket for India's Test team and white ball team ever since. So that when you kind of working in the sport, and I'm commentating on a lot of the England games, things kind of move on. You think things are moving on quite quickly, and things that you and then you look back and you just see how much has happened since then. And obviously, we had our little contretemps on the last.
I was actually going to bring this up. Yeah, I know where you're going.
About this being an isolated test match being brought back in. And it has kind of, in a way, it has devalued because you've lost the narrative, the thread of the series, and the different personnel. You got two different captains: Stokes captain in England and Jasprit Bumrah captaining India in this series. But I do think it was worth playing it, and I do think it was worth bringing it back because it has put a full stop to a series. And it was obviously a brilliant test match, wasn't it? And I love test cricket. So bringing a test match back just to play test cricket is enough for me.
Yep. Mohed said hello. Hello, Mohed.
Hi, Mode.
Mode. So, well, I will do the play ratings for this game, James, as well, because it's something I do enjoy hearing your opinions on. So we'll do the Indian and England. We'll go with England first. Shubman Gill.
Half. He's not hardly affected the matches at all, has he? I mean, he's a better player than that. I really like Shubman Gill.
No, he was really good in Australia.
Yeah. I love watching him in the IPL, but he's just not got going at all. And refer back to the new ball is very hard to face in India, especially this Duke's ball. That's the way it's behaving at the moment. So. Shubman Gill is somebody who has a huge future ahead of him. He's just not featured in this test match, and people have that, don't you? You have test matches that pass you by as players sometimes, and Shubman has got on the plane, come all the way to England, and really hasn't featured.
Yeah, he was very good in the last two test matches when he played up in Australia in that historic series. I'd give him a 2. As you just said, didn't impact at all. Pujara.
Pujara, I love him. He's played for Yorkshire, so he's a Yorkie. He is, when you talk about Bazball and everything else, and the attacking stuff, Pujara is a bit of a throwback, isn't he, to somebody that's a little bit more determined to not give his wicket away. And
which I love.
That's that series in Australia where Australian bowlers peppered him, and he just wore the bruises and just carried on. He's a terrific player. For me, Cheteshwar, I'd give him 7 out of this game. I think he contributed, and I think he was good.
Yeah. I'll give him a 6. He did well in the second innings. First innings probably let down a little bit. If he would have scored more runs, I would have gave him a high rating. For Hari,
2 or 3. Didn't really, same as Shubman Gill, really, wasn't it? He kind of passed the test match that passed him by. He got in. He threatened to get in the second innings, but he didn't kick on. So for Hari, for me, just like a 2 or a 3. Just kind of thanks for coming.
We'll get into that. Sandip has a question. Not typical 50 appears in last 4 matches for England. Absolute road. Duke ball batch is different. Seems ball had to change frequently. And also England's positive approach. Just on that, what did you think of the ball changes before we go back to our ratings? Seemed ridiculous, James. Absolutely ridiculous.
I listened to Atherton and Hussain actually on TV commentary talking about this, and it's like when the ball's doing something, none of the players want to change it. It could look like a dog's had it in their basket for 4 days and chewed it to death, but if it's doing something, nobody wants to change it. It's as soon as you get a couple of overs where the ball does nothing, all of a sudden, umpire, take a look at that, please. Stick it through your handcuffs and see if there's if we can change it. And apparently the rules are that the gauge is just that. It's a guide. Apparently it's up to the umpire to look at the ball and actually make an assessment. But what we're getting to at the moment, and we've had it all the way through both series so far, is you're getting the likes of Stuart Broad standing over the umpire, making comments throughout the gauge being tested, and almost putting pressure on the umpire to change the ball, and then making mock celebrations when they get the ball changed. And apparently the gauge, as I say, is just a guide. It's up to the umpire to look at it, and then he makes his assessment, and he's more within his rights to throw it back to the fielding side and say, get on with it. But apparently COVID's played a part in these balls being not quite fit for purpose. But yeah, it's happening far too often. And when we're talking about slow over rates, if we're stopping every 2 overs for a 5-minute look at the cricket ball, that's not helping get through overs at all, is it?
No, it is definitely. I'll speak a little bit more on that because I have my own opinion on that. But thank you, Sandip, for that question, or more of a statement. Back to the play ratings. Virat Kohli.
I love Virat Kohli. I know he's a bit Marmite, isn't he, out there? And people sometimes don't like his antics at times, but I just absolutely love the bloke. I've criticised him on Twitter in the past for overstepping what I think is the line, wherever that line is. We all have lines in different areas, don't we? But I just love him. I would love to see him get back to scoring runs on a more fluent and regular basis, because when he's playing well, there are a few better players in the world to watch. But I'm going to give him a 9 purely because I saw him play again in England.
Okay. Well, fair enough. I don't think he contributed at all. Now, I know he got a very good ball from Stokes, which inconsistent bounce happens. Happened to Steve Smith against Anderson in Adelaide. So those things happen, but I don't think he impacted too much. I'll give him a 3.
I can give him whatever I like. He gets a 9 because he's Virat Kohli, and I love Virat Kohli.
That's why we love your opinion, James. On actually Virat Kohli now, I said last year, Steve Smith is done. He won't make another 100. Is this the same with Virat Kohli? He's done.
He's too good to be. Both Smith and Kohli, to be fair, I think are too good to be written off. Kohli even more so. I think he's the one guy, probably before anybody else, who was averaging over 50 in all forms of the game. He's just a true. I mean, he's. I think a lot of people, when we're talking about this last 2 years, I'll say it again. What Bairstow said about the bubble not being for him, he just didn't fit a COVID bubble. I think Virat's very similar. Busy kind of fella, wants to get out there. He's used to having a lifestyle where he's traveling around and doing stuff, and being crammed into a hotel room is not going to do him any good either. It doesn't do anybody any good, really, does it? But there are some personalities that really don't thrive in 4 walls of a hotel room, getting room service, waiting to be let out. I can imagine Virat's being one of those. And I think probably once we get back to normal a little bit, Virat will start to come back to his best. And he probably needs to play more as well. India play that infrequently in the Test arena.
Yeah, they do.
He gets one chance in the blue moon at the moment, doesn't he, to actually score some Test runs?
Yeah. So, Sandip was more on my side, only a 5 out of form. Back to player ratings. This man not get a 5. Rishabh Pant.
Rishabh gets a 9.
Yeah.
He's just extraordinary. Love Rishabh Pant. I'd shoot. If I knew he was playing anywhere in the world, in any format in the world, I'd try and turn it on and watch it if I could. Yeah. Because he's tremendous. I just love the fact that he's always got a smile on his face, and he plays stupid shots as well. When he plays a shot and it goes away for 4 or 6, and he's basically full on his backside, and he's watching the ball go across the boundary, lying on his elbow on the ground. You can't make it up sometimes with him. He plays the classical shots. He plays the stupid shots. He plays all the inventive shots. His keeping's getting better. I thought his keeping was a little bit dodgy at times in this Test match, but it's getting better all the time. And he's just a phenomenal player. He's still only 24. I saw a stat the other day. He's head and shoulders above his peers in terms of wicketkeeper batsmen at the same age. And you think, well, that's because he's played more Test matches than anybody else at the same age. He hasn't actually. It's about the same. The likes of Quinton de Kock, all of the kind of people that you think are really good wicketkeeper batsmen. Pant is miles ahead of them in the run scoring stakes. He's absolutely superb. Love him.
Going on Rishabh Pant, are you surprised he didn't use Jack Leach more often against Pant? Now, Nathan Lyon has had success against Rishabh Pant bowling outside of off stump when Pant's in the mood. So he bowls deliberately outside of stump, getting Pant to chase wide. Are you surprised that Jack Leach didn't bowl as much as he did and didn't use that tactic?
I think he did use the tactic a little bit. One of the ones that he fell on the floor to was one that he dragged from well outside the off stump and hit it over square leg. But I think to be honest, I don't think you can criticise Ben Stokes for his misuse or underuse of Jack Leach. He's bowling him far more than Joe Root used to, and Leach can't complain. And it was a different challenge for Jack Leach in this Test match because New Zealand didn't really get after Jack, whereas Rishabh Pant was always going to try and get after him. I thought he dealt with it reasonably well, actually, Jack Leach. I think he's bowling okay. But yeah, he's a hard player for anybody to bowl at, Rishabh Pant, isn't he?
Yeah, he is indeed. We seem to be very busy with questions today. People commenting. Nadeem said, "Why is our team falling down the last 2 years? We cannot produce a board batsman who can trust. Who we can trust. We can't. We can't produce a board batsman who we can trust." Thank you for the question.
He wants. I think he's suggesting, Nadeem, that people that play consistently overseas. I think you got a short. I think you got a bit of a short memory there, Nadeem, because you've got Rohit Sharma, who was tremendous in the first part of the series. This series last year. You only have to go back to India in Australia. Lucas won't like me saying it, but they were tremendous there. Pujara wearing the bruises, Rishabh Pant getting his team across the line a couple of times. Yeah, so you do have quality players, but it's always the same. I mean, we're getting back to normal now, Nadeem, as well, where we always used to talk about the fact that teams found it easier to win at home and then they struggled away. COVID changed that. COVID leveled the playing field a little bit, and COVID had empty stadiums, and both teams almost feeling like they were playing away because they were in the bubbles. That's now disappearing from us, thankfully, and we're getting crowds back in, and people are able to move around more freely and enjoy life and what have you. COVID's still around, but we're able to kind of hopefully live with it. And we're starting to see England go back to normal, because England usually are pretty strong at home. England are hard to beat in England.
They are.
And India don't always come across here and find it very easy to play in the English conditions. So I think you're being a bit harsh then, Nadeem. I think you've got some cracking players in that Indian side. England is not the easiest place to come to, particularly when you got the likes of Jimmy Anderson moving the ball around corners.
And another one is KL Rahul, who I think did well in that early series last year.
No doubt that India in this test match, this one-off continuation test match, missed both Rohit and KL.
Yep. Thanks for bringing that up, James. I'm not to read any more Indian comments regarding the Australian Test Series. Back to the ratings. Okay.
That was so good, wasn't it? A depleted third team India basically beat you a lot.
Yeah, great, fantastic, full of IPL players. I really felt the notifications exploding today. Trust me.
And the IPL's great for that, because it brings these youngsters through, gets them blooded, puts them in front of these pressure cooker atmospheres, and they get used to it early. Fantastic.
Yep. Yeah. So Subham said hello. Hello, guys.
Hello,
Subham. Okay, back to play ratings. Iyer.
Shreyas Iyer, I thought was disappointing, actually. I've seen a lot of him, and he's a tremendously flowing, graceful cricketer. He played one cover drive in the second innings, which was a little bit more like him, but especially the second innings, he couldn't hit a pull shot to save his life. He was clothing everything to mid-wicket. He gets a 3, I think. He can do a lot better than that.
Yep, I'm giving him a 3. I don't think he impacted at all. Someone who won't 3, Jadeja.
You say that. I thought his century in the first innings was superb.
What?
I thought his innings.
Go on.
His innings in the second innings was good, but he didn't capitalize on batting with the tail. It was, he got out just before the new ball. He did everything right until the ball before the new ball, and then got himself out. And we know what Jadeja, anybody watching this that watches the IPL knows that Jadeja can be incredibly destructive. He had the platform twice for India to bat with the tail and open his shoulders a little bit, and he didn't do that. So I think there's some minus points there. And I thought with the ball,
he's bowling,
he bowled too flat, too fast, and he didn't give the ball a chance to spin. So I'm going to give Jadeja 6.
Yeah, Kevin Peterson, amazingly criticizing a spin bowler, said that he didn't fight it enough. But if you go to his point, it is true. He never really flighted it much. He just bowled very flat, tried to blast his way through.
There's room to have the quicker ball. And he bowls that very well. But take pace off and give it a bit more loop, get it above the eye line, allow it a chance to actually bite into the surface. And he wasn't doing that.
Yeah, we have to judge on his bowling. We just can't judge on his innings. I'm giving him a 7. Okay, go to.
I'll tell you what. I wish I had his hair. He's got the thickest, most lustrous hair in the world, doesn't he? What a bloke! What a rock star bloke! He's fantastic.
And something we don't talk about him, he's a world-class fielder. He's probably the best fielders
He's extraordinary. I'll tell you what, the Advanced Hair Studio, if you're watching this, the Advanced Hair Studio, obviously you've kind of rehabilitated many professional cricketers' hair. You should sign up Ravindra Jadeja, not because he needs you, but because he'd look fantastic on your advert.
Yeah. Led by the late great Shane Warne, who did adverts along with Martin Crowe and all that. They used to be on the Australian commercials during the early 2000s. Shadul Thakur.
Thought he bowled well at times. I mean, when you come up against a Bairstow and a Root in form like that, it's hard to bowl at them. And Root's one of the hardest batsmen to bowl at in world cricket, I think. He just nudges and noodles and deflects and then strokes you through the covers. He's hard to bowl at. I thought batting-wise, he got done over by Matty Potts, who we'll talk about in a second, I'm sure. But so before, kind of like a bit meh.
Yeah. I thought he was okay with it at times, but he's also as an all-rounder because he was brilliant in Australia. Saying that, it seems that they're all brilliant in Australia. But he was very good in Australia, so I think batting could have been a little bit better. So I'm giving him around about a 4. Mohammad Shami.
Shami, I tell you what, Shami I thought was brilliant. And his statistics in the match do not do him justice because he beat the outside edge of the bat every 5 seconds. He was so unlucky. He had a couple of drop catches as well, I think, along the way. He could quite easily have had 5 or 6 wickets in England's first innings. He ended up with 2. And then he ended up wicketless in the second innings, didn't he? So in terms of how he played, he's about an 8 or a 9. In terms of his actual statistics, he actually comes across as almost like a 3 or a 4. So we'll put him somewhere in the middle at about a 6.
Yeah, I was to say 6 average. I was just about to give you 6. Nadeem, just a quick question here. Who will win the T20 series?
I think I don't know Nadeem. Joss Butler coming into captain in England. England have got a terrific T20 team, but so have India. I think both of these teams will go into the T20 World Cup as two of probably the 3 favourites to win it. Australia will be there or thereabouts. New Zealand are always good, but England and India will be right up there. So I think it's going to be really a really good series. I wouldn't want to call it, Nadeem. I think it's going to be tremendous to watch. Looking forward to it.
Okay, the captain, Bumrah.
Just love him. I mean, his bowling action in itself is incredibly unique. You'd be able to tell him anywhere, wouldn't you? And
I'll get jealous, James, because he's the same. I'm taller than him, and I can't get anywhere near his speed.
and that bowling action was one where, I mean, it's well documented, honed in his backyard because he had little space to actually do his run up. And then when he started playing seriously, coaches got him on the grass stuff and tried to extend his run up and change it. And he stopped being out of bowl very well. So he went back to what the tried and trusted, which is a good lesson to anybody. You can be quirky and be successful in sport. And Jasprit, I thought, captained the team well. I think it was hard to captain India in that second innings. But bearing in mind it was his first try at captaincy ever, I don't think he did too badly. Bowling-wise,
I thought he went all right.
Bowling-wise, brilliant. Gary Sobers-esque with the bat in the first innings as well. Off Stuart Broad, he gets a 7. Very good, solid 7.
I was going to say 7 indeed. Better than average. He was very good. And the last one, Mohammad Siraj.
Siraj, for me, probably gets a 5. Batting, take that out of the equation because he can't, can he? But with the ball, I like the way he runs in. I like the fact he's feisty. I like the way he eyeballs a batsman. There's nothing wrong with that. I like to see fast bowlers look a bit snarly sometimes, as long as it doesn't cross the line and end up being petulant and nasty and really rude and derogatory and abusive. Siraj has got a little bit of that in him, that mean streak in him. I didn't think he bowled particularly well on a consistent basis. There were some good balls in there, but there was too much on the pads and too much down the leg side. So he'd get a 4.5, I think, from me.
Oh, geez, that's a bit harsh. I was thinking a little bit high. I thought he was fantastic in the first innings. With the bowling, he picked up 4 wickets. I'm going to give him a 7. I thought that, again, it's tough to judge first.
He did get the tail out in the first innings, didn't he?
Yeah, he did. Yeah, he did. He did seem to. Picked up broad pots. but he did out Joe Root. So that's very hard to do when Joe Root is set.
Quite a handy wicket these days.
Yeah. Very good wicket. Now to England. So India's performance as a team, James. This game.
I think they will be very disappointed. But I think they'll be sitting down in their dressing room tonight thinking, what on earth have we just done? Because they controlled the first. I saw one of the correspondents said India won the first 3 days, England won the second 2. And if you compare it to a football match, at half time in the soccer matches, some people will see it. England were probably 5-1 down at half time. They had the half time oranges, came back out again, and obviously won the second half and ended up winning 6-5, didn't they? So it was that kind of topsy turvy sort of test match, and India played their part in that by allowing England back into it. Like I say, the second innings for India is where they took the foot off the neck of England. They could have really ground England into the dirt there and at least guaranteed themselves a draw, which would have been a one series. I think they'll be very disappointed. So as a result of that, probably a 5 out of 10 or something. I think there's a lot they could have done differently in the last 2 days.
Yeah, they weren't blown away. They were in this test for a lot of time. I'm going to give them a 5. What about Crawley? We're about to get that Nadeem. We're going to speak about the England. Not quite yet with Crawley. Alex Lees.
Alex Lees has shown signs of improvement consistently. I think he had a poor test match at Headingley, but he was unlucky to be run out in the second innings because he got England off to a really good start. England's fastest ever century stand in a test match, which was a lot of it was down to Alex Lees. And if you had actually taken you back to the West Indies, watching Alex Lees batting in the West Indies, where he put a lot of his shots away, you'd have never have thought that Alex Lees would have been outscoring Zach Crawley in the way he was doing in the start of that innings in the second dig. That opening partnership, the century stand, they both fell very soon afterwards, but that was very key to allowing Root and Bairstow to bat like they did, because the ball was older and they shielded Root from that new ball. So first innings not so much so. Second innings much better. I'll give Crawley a 4.5. I'll give Lees a 6. And I think both will start against South Africa.
Really? You think they'll both play?
Yeah.
Especially Crawley, okay.
They obviously they see something in Zach Crawley. And as I said before, he played with a lot more discipline, left the ball much better. Now, if he can continue to have that mindset and shelve some shots at the start of his innings and earn the right to play them later, then he maybe has a test future. But we'll see.
Okay, I'll give Alex Lees a 5 and Crawley a 5. It's very hard to judge a player when he's been run out. Mind you, that is a mental error, but I don't think it was Alex Lees' fault. I think Joe Root sold him a little bit there, James.
Sold him down the river big time, didn't he?
A bit like Khawaja on Steve Smith last week. Ollie Pope.
Ollie Pope gets 1.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if you saw I'll give him 2 actually, because I'm going to give him 1 for his work with the helmet cam at short leg, because he made me feel sick throughout the test match. He was looking right, he was looking left, he was looking up, he was looking down, he looked everywhere apart from where I wanted him to look. And by the time the ball was delivered, I was in the toilet being sick because I got seasickness. It was ridiculous.
Well, you the broadcast partner, I think it's Sky Sports, just do a little bit of that. I don't mind the helmet cam. But I think they could have done a little bit better than that vision. It feels like a roundabout.
They picked obviously the most hyperactive player in the England team to wear it, and they'd have been better off, I think, actually doing it session by session and giving you like the highlights of his helmet cam edited down, which didn't make you feel seasick.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I feel like you're on a merry-go-round.
Yeah,
Ollie Pope, just went back. Yeah, he went backwards in this test match. James, in my opinion,
he had a good summer so far, but that wasn't his best test. No.
Yep. Root
10, Bairstow 10.
Yep.
End of story.
Yep. I'll give Root a 9. Would have loved it if he did in the first innings. Bairstow for me, just hit the nail on the head. 10 did the first innings. All
right, let's give Rooty at 9.5 because we've got to reward Bairstow for back-to-back tons, don't we?
Yeah, exactly. Ben Stokes.
Bowling wise, very good, much better.
Yep.
Batting wise, what's he doing?
Yeah.
What's he doing? Yeah, Bazball, fine, but you can't walk out there, Ben, wearing a Bazball t-shirt. Basically, he seems to have this thing where I'm going to show the team how we're going to do this. I'm going to be massively reckless. That's not Test cricket, Ben. You know what Test cricket's like. You watched that. I mean, I'm going to mention it again. I'm really sorry, Lucas, but Headingley, 2019, the first 60 balls, he was 3 not out. He played really patiently. Then he started to play a little bit more aggressively, and then in the final third of his innings, he went bonkers. You have got different gears available to you in Test cricket. It doesn't all have to be shut your eyes and try and hit it over the top. We saw Bairstow hitting it along the ground. He was equally aggressive, but he played with his brain and with technique. Stokes is a far better player than he's showing in this England Test team at the moment. All for positivity, but I'm not for slogging, reckless slogging, and that's what Stokes is doing at the moment. So basically, I'm going to give Stokes 3.
Yeah, I was going to give him a 5. His bowling was okay, a little bit better, but his batting wasn't that great. Sam Billings.
Batting wise, in the first innings, he did all right, didn't he? His keeping's not up to muster. He dropped a very simple chance, which he was fortunate that Root had his wits about him and pounced on the rebound.
36 in the first innings, James.
He looked like he'd put butter on his gloves at some parts of the when he was keeping. He doesn't. I mean, to be fair, I really like Sam Billings, and he's a good one-day player. He doesn't play enough red ball to warrant being England's reserve keeper at the moment in Test cricket. He doesn't play enough red ball, and when you're keeping in one-day cricket, you actually don't take that many catches or take that many takes because the batsmen are hitting the ball. Batsmen chase after everything; they hit everything. So, playing a T20, say 120 balls, you might actually only take 10 of them, and the rest of it is just kind of catching the balls it's thrown in from the fielders. Whereas in a Test match, they're leaving alone a lot. You're taking a lot more. You've got to concentrate for that much longer. It is a totally different challenge for a keeper, and I'd like to see, if they're going to use Sam Billings again, on the basis that Bairstow's in the side, Pope's in the side even. If they're going to use Sam Billings again, he's got to play some county championship cricket for Kent and actually start to play red ball cricket. But they've got Ollie Robinson II. Is another Ollie Robinson plays for Kent, captains Kent in the red ball, keeps for Kent in the red ball, and he's a better player than Sam Billings in my view.
Stuart Broad, our third man, Nadeem, said, what about Broad's future? Which is a very good question again, Nadeem.
If you look back, Nadeem, at Stuart Broad's past, it is a 99.99999% out of 100, isn't it? If you look at his future, I don't think there is too much of it to look forward to. I said earlier, Nadeem, I think his powers are just starting to wane a little bit. I was speaking to somebody the other day who's a Nottinghamshire supporter who said when he saw him play in the Championship, he was a little bit disappointed that he'd looked like he tailed off a little bit. He's got the ability to suddenly put in 2 overs where he changes a game, and that's why he's still worth picking for England. But I think, if you think about all the players that could come back for England, your Jofra Archers, your Chris Wokeses in English conditions, your Ollie Stones, your Mark Woods, Ollie Robinson, there's a whole host of players out injured at the moment. If they're all suddenly back fit again, if the cricket gods suddenly wave their magic wand and they're all suddenly available for selection, I think Broad struggles to get into my best 11.
Yeah, my source from Nottingham said the same thing, that Stuart Broad has been very disappointing when he played those few games for Nottinghamshire.
I say before, he's gone from being legendary class to world class to brilliant to very good to now probably just good. Being a good Test cricketer is not to be derided.
No, of course not. No, but I think 99.9% will take a good player, or in fact, a good player any format. Jack Leach.
4. Did okay. That's coming off his 10-foot. Rishabh Pant tried to take him down. He got him out, didn't he? I don't think he was amazing. I don't think he was poor. 4 or 5.
Yeah, I'll give him I think he was average, so around about 5. Matthew Potts.
Love Matthew Potts. He's been England's real find of the summer. He's come from Durham. You get the impression with Matty Potts that Ben Stokes says jump off that 36-story building, he'd go and do it for him. You know, he will do anything his captain asks. He will run through a brick wall, go out and play naked for us for a session. He'd do that. You know, anything asked of him, he will do it for his country. I don't think they'll ask him that, but and what he's
not
doing,
the 1800s anymore, James.
What he's doing is good, isn't it? You know, he's brilliant because he's coming. He's had obviously great debut at Lords. He's taken wickets in pretty much every innings he's bowled at. He's been economical when he's been required to. He's bowled the short ball when he's been asked to. He's taken wickets when they needed them, and he's taken important wickets as well. I think he's been absolutely superb this summer. This Test match maybe didn't get quite the wickets that his bowling deserved, but he still gets a 6 or a 7. He's certainly not. He's not had a bad test.
Fryjo 123. Hello, Fryjo.
Hello.
I think that's it for the. Oh no, I've done this 2 weeks in a row. I was thinking
Honestly,
Anderson yet again.
Lucas.
Forgive me. I've done it again, James. James Anderson.
Jimmy. Oh, Jimmy, etc. Just fun. I mean, I've said this for the last 3 or 4 years, and I said it when Shane Warne was coming towards the end as well. And I'm pleased that I actually heeded my own advice in that respect. You are in Stuart Broad and Jimmy Anderson, and increasingly Joe Root, and hopefully Johnny Bairstow for many years to come, and Ben Stokes, and for Australia. Yeah, there are certain players we're going to still be talking about in 50 years' time if we're still around. Anderson and Broad are 2 of those guys, and we need to treasure every single ball they bowl. We need to soak them into our retinas. We need to embrace the fact that they have been cricketing gods for England. 1,200 wickets or more between them in Test cricket. It will come to an end at some stage. They are not going to basically, they can beat every kind of batsman around the world, but they won't be able to beat old Father Time, who will catch up with them at some stage. But let's just enjoy them while they last, because they are legendary. We still talk about Latham, not Latham. What's his name? Oh, this is awful. Statham and Truman for England, going back to kind of like the 50s and 60s. We'll always talk about Lillian Thompson for Australia. We'll talk about the battery of fast bowlers that West Indies had in the 80s. From an English perspective, Broad and Anderson will be talked about in 100 years' time. So every time they walk out there, clap them, celebrate them, and watch them as closely as you can, because it won't go on for too much longer.
Yeah, I'm giving James Anderson an 8. He was fantastic. Average of 12 in that first innings.
I gave him a big build-up. That's enough for me.
That's enough. That's enough. Joe Clark. I still needed my pronunciation. I'm shocking with them. Sorry about that. What do you think the main reason for India's loss today? Just a quick one on that, James.
How do you say Jos Buttler?
Which
is spelled exactly the same way as Josh Clark was on the screen there.
Yeah, well, I give 3 different answers, James. I'll say Josh or Joe's or Joss.
What you need is these, mate. That's what you need. The reason for India's loss, I'll go back to it, Joss, and I'll do it right. I enjoyed it actually. The recent series between Netherlands and England. The Netherlands commentator out there kept saying Jos Buttler because he Dutch and that's how they say it, but it's Jos Clark. I think I said it earlier, Joss. I don't know how long you've been watching for, but I felt that India were in control of that Test match for much of it. They lost it in the 3rd innings. They lost it by not being ruthless. They lost it by not sticking their foot on England's throat and really killing England off. And they should have been far more hungry for runs. They got a little bit careless and they kept the door open. And that's where they lost the Test match.
You said any pronunciation is fine. So there you go. Sorry about that. Okay, now, England's performance as a team.
God. I mean, I don't know where we go from here, because I've lost complete track of what normal is. I mean, what is cricket? What is Test cricket? What are when you're talking about what's going to happen as a pundit now in the next sort of hour or something? How do you deal with this? Because the rules are changing in front of our very eyes. It's brilliant to watch. It's absolutely amazing to watch. But no team chases through. It's the highest ever chase that England have done in Test match history. It's the 8th highest, I think, in world Test history. England have played 1,500 or so Test matches, and that's the best they've ever chased down. 8th best. It's the best in England, apart from once the Australians under Bradman in 1948. I think got just over 400 in England. It beat the record at Edgbaston by about 100 runs for a chase. It's just rewriting what is normal in front of our eyes. And they asked Joe Root after the match finished about how do they see this as being possible? Because look, from the minute Root and Bairstow got together, it looked like they believed they were going to knock the runs off. And that, belief is one thing, and that belief comes from 3 Test matches against New Zealand and taking all of the confidence out of that into this game against India, thinking because quite honestly, if India had set England 600 in 2 hours, they would have gone for it and they'd have lost, but they would have gone for it because that's just how they're playing their cricket these days. So, they just have this belief, and there will be days where, I think Johnny Bairstow said it today, there will be days where this kind of mentality goes wrong and they lose a Test match for it. But while it's lasting, while they're winning, and while they're playing cricket like this, and while Bairstow and Root are batting like they are doing, just absolutely superb, isn't
it? Josh said this has to be one of the greatest wins for England in the past few years. Probably more than that, James. A decade, if not more. This was unbelievable, that win.
Well, they don't mean too many wins to pick from in recent times. I mean, Rooty actually got asked. They were taking the mickey out of him a little bit on the interview post match because they ended up kind of almost implicitly or subtly criticising his captaincy. Yeah, big smile. He says, "Yeah, it's my fault. I didn't pick Bairstow. Bairstow was in and out under my captaincy. That's my fault. Blame me." That kind of thing. But the mood in that side, one of the most pleasing things of this summer so far for me, as somebody that knows Joe Root a little bit, is just seeing the pressure, the strain of captaincy come off his shoulders. In the West Indies, he looked a shadow of his former self, looked completely drained. You watch him being interviewed after this match today, massive smile on his face, and just absolutely loving life. And magnificent, absolutely magnificent to see it. And he's a lovely lad, as I say, cheeky chappy, cricket badger, and good to see him doing well. Best Test batsman in the world by a mile at the moment.
Absolutely. Now, that was the review of the 5th Test match between England and India. We want to get something a little bit more serious. Josh Clark said a big mistake that India did is not playing the 5th Test match. That's actually a good point. So what he's saying is big mistake that India not played the last Test match last year when they had the chance. Do you agree with that? Is it an opinion?
I don't know if it was a mistake. We don't quite know why they made that decision. I'm sure that'll come out when Ravi Shastri writes another book or something. That'll spill the beans. We don't quite know if it was COVID, whether it was IPL. What was the motivation for that? Because that was all discussions behind closed doors. And we can just, if we're going to kind of criticize India, we can only do that by making assumptions, and I don't want to do that. I think Joss is right. I think if that Test match had been played last year, India wouldn't have lost it. Certainly not in the manner they've just lost that one.
I agree with 100%.
The continuity of the success of that series would have carried into the 5th one. So I think Joss has got a very good point.
Yeah, because England were an absolute mess during that time under Chris Silverwood. So I agree with that. Now, something more serious and more important.
I'll just take you up on that. Chris Silverwood's a good bloke and a very good cricket coach.
Yeah.
I repeat again what I said earlier. COVID bubbles for England, who played more in them than anybody else across those 2 years, made a big difference to how that team played. Somebody criticised Joe Root to me the other day in his captaincy over that 2-year period. And yes, they didn't get the success, but I think he deserves a huge amount of credit, and Chris Silverwood, for steering England through those bubbles, playing more cricket around the world and in England than anybody else on the planet, certainly more than Australia. And they propped up cricket and gave us something to watch during COVID. They deserve a lot of credit for that.
Yep. Okay. There was an incident. I want to bring this up. I don't want to spend too much time on it, but I think it's important. There was an incident. I don't know what it was. I think it was day 2. Where there was a problem day 4. Okay, yes, yesterday. The crowds with a couple of chants, towards Indian players and fans with the curry. I'm not going to get into exactly what said. Curry this, curry that, in a very negative racial way, if you want to look at that.
It was blatant racism, Lucas.
Yeah. I'm not the one to talk about stuff like that, but I will give my opinion on this. If you want to go for your life on this, the floor is yours. But I saw a comment saying that there wasn't enough people that stand up towards this. I have my own opinion on this, James. So you can disagree, you can agree, whatnot. But this is my opinion on this. Of course, I think it should be called out. There's no 100% it should be called out. If you're a person standing next to it, call it out 100%. But if this was me, I don't think I would. Now, this is why. And this is why I think people do call it out. Now, apparently this man that said this was intoxicated. That's not an excuse. I don't want to hear that. But if you're an intoxicated person, James, this is my point of view. And if you're saying stuff or doing stuff, whether it's racial or if you're doing something in your own home, and you are not allowed to do that by a certain person, you're intoxicated. I think that person could act in a violent way, James, towards that person. So let's say you're intoxicated, and I said, no, you're not allowed to do that. What I feel is that person could act in a negative way, and it could put you in a horrible situation that you don't want to be in. So I'm not saying that's different for everybody, but I sometimes feel that. That's why I do not. I've never heard that in my life in a cricket game. Thank God for that. But I'm just giving you my point of view that I don't think people. I think people are scared for what would happen to them. If you stop an intoxicated person from doing what he wants to do, I think that can be a very dangerous situation for that person, because as we know, adrenaline kicks in with people that are intoxicated, drugs and whatnot. Your opinion on that view and your opinions on this alone.
There's a picture I tweeted actually this morning of the bloke actually holding his nose. What the words to the effect of smelly peas. People can obviously work out what the P stands for.
Of course,
and obviously that's to Indian people. So he's obviously not even identifying them right. But it's just absolutely, it is 100% bona fide racism. That's, there's no way of putting it any other way. And it's completely unacceptable. One of the things that makes cricket great is that you can sit side by side. You can support Australia. I can support England. We'll give each other grief all the way through the day. We'll have a beer afterwards and we'll enjoy the day together. And it should be the same, it doesn't have to be a beer, obviously, if it's Pakistan, but, there should be the same respect given to every supporter, whether it's your own supporter or whether it's an opposing team supporter. I think they should have called it out around them because it's not acceptable. It's not expected. It's poisonous. It's toxic. It ruins not just the person's day that is getting the abuse. And from what I understand, it was members of the Barrett Army. Families were there. Kids were there. Makes it even worse.
Sorry to interrupt you, James, on that. But they're also the people around there. Some were laughing at that, James, thinking it was funny.
What makes it worse as well is that it ruins their day. I've seen people say, "Well, they should move." No, they shouldn't.
No,
they bought their tickets. They're sat there. They're comfy. They've got everything set up. They're not the ones that have done anything wrong. They should stay exactly where they are. It's the people that are causing the abuse that should be forced to move. It spoils the day of people, the right-minded people sat around them, because they don't want to sit there watching people shouting racist crap across the stadiums.
Of course,
and if people are laughing at it, then they're complicit to it, and they're as bad as the people shouting it out. What I agree with you to an extent. Nobody likes confrontation. It's just not. I'm English. We're even less like confrontation. Australians probably like it more than we do. But we're reserved, aren't we? Stereotypically reserved. But there comes a point where you can't just turn the blind eye to stuff. That is what actually propagates it. That is what keeps it going. Because if people sitting around there who are just kind of like whispering to mates, so that's rude, that's not right. That by not actually doing anything about it, you're effectively giving them a free pass to carry on. Now, hopefully, the authorities will take some action against these pillocks and get rid of them. But what needs to happen, in my view, and having worked at a cricket ground, I know how the sort of stewarding set up and the kind of reporting process is. And I know that the stewards at the bottom level of the sort of food chain of stewards are paid nothing or not very much. And there's a steward working in isolation with a high-vis jacket on, walking towards a group of blokes who, as you say, you're not quite sure how they're going to react. That's quite a daunting thing for anybody to do in any walk of life, especially if you're only getting paid pittance per hour.
Very good point.
So that is the same for a spectator, but there have to be mechanisms in place. Just because you don't want to, I mean, I tweeted today, and I was quite proud of this analogy. So I'm going to read it out to you. My tweet was, I know most people hate confrontation, but when you've got, I'll use the rude word here, when you've got dickheads holding their noses, shouting smelly peas at people near you, why are you not reporting it yourself? You don't have to call the fire brigade from inside the burning building. That was my analogy. So you see a fire.
Very good. Yeah.
You see a fire, you'd have to run into the building and then pick the phone up. You can go off and tell the fire brigade without actually endangering yourself. So usually at grounds, there's text things for, have you seen anything that's been offensive? Message us and tell us where you're sitting and we'll come and find it out. The stewards should have reporting mechanisms where they can either call in reinforcements or get the police in, because this is a criminal offence. Being a racist idiot is actually breaking the law in England.
I do know that,
So there are ways you can play your part in cutting down on racism in stadiums without actually having to walk up to them, look them in the eyes, and say, "Stop doing that, please," because I don't like it. So you don't have to put your neck on the line effectively to actually make a difference.
Okay. Again, I'm going to use the most fucking. Oh shit! I said a bad word there. My bad. Sorry about that, James. You
said two bad words, actually. You said one, and then you said another after you did it.
I did. Yeah. See, that's exactly why, ladies and gentlemen, that I did not do the review after the Headingley Test or the Gabba Test match between India, because you'll hear words like that. Apologies up front to the boss as well, who won't like that. But let's, as you said, other ways to confront that without getting a confrontation. So let's say, as I said, without the swearing, I'm using the most negative response here, or passive is the right word. So you confront this person, you tell this person to stop it. The drunken person or whatever says, go sit back down, continues to say it. What should the person do then? Just as an example.
Well,
so there's got to be the person off. Yeah, you can't just grab this person, because then you are walking yourself into a confrontation.
As I say, there's got to be some kind of reporting mechanism inside these stadiums where you escalate it. It starts off being, sorry, mate, can you stop doing that? To steward, they're doing this, or the person that's being abused complains about it, as I understand they did do. But from what I gather, it was late in the day. The stewards wanted an easy life, and they didn't do anything about it. They just kind of thought, this will blow over and they'll all go home in a few minutes' time. And I don't agree with it, but you can understand if you're only paying pittance an hour and you're there it's a long day. You can maybe understand it to a degree, but it's wrong. The steward should be acting whether it's 9 a.m. or 7 p.m. But there needs to be something beyond that, doesn't there? And whether it's the police getting involved or whether it's a bigger steward, a more senior steward, or a group of stewards. So your muscles start to get flexed a little bit more as it escalates, and ultimately you take the little toe rags, you grab them by the neck, you pull them out of the ground, and you prosecute them because it's just out of order.
Just Clark, this has happened twice with India players. It happened last year in England. That happened in Australia too, which it did. There was a few incidents with the curry. Go back to India with your curry, such and such. I won't swear this time, but what's the appropriate punishment? Now, I've heard life bans. I don't believe in life bans. I have another punishment, But I think this is just my personal opinion because I'm such a nice guy, James. I like to believe there's a good person in everybody, and I think everybody deserves a second chance. My view on this was if this is a parent saying that, ban the kid and let the kid say, "Mummy and Daddy, why can I not go to Test match cricket or go to any cricket?" And let their parent explain why they can't go to him. I think that would be the best punishment. Now, not everybody has kids who does this, but what would your appropriate punishment be? And would you agree on my opinion that I'd said?
This could be a really long answer, and I'll try and make it not so long. I've been kind of like involved with Azim Rafiq and the sort of the racism in English cricket over the last 2 years, covering that and trying to influence it for the right. There's no place in my book for racism of any kind, not just in cricket, but wider society. Unfortunately, we have racism in all parts of society. Cricket is no different because it is just a part of society, as are people that are sitting in the stands, as are players. But there's no place for it at all. I don't think people should be cancelled immediately. I think everybody has the ability to be better. And if you go down the route, I've said this quite a few times on stuff I've done on race. I think that if you go down the route of cancelling people and just saying, shove off, you racist git, don't come back here again, then you don't give that person's probably more likely to just dig his heels in and be an even bigger idiot in the future.
Of course.
And you've got to give people the opportunity to be better and to, otherwise we'll be talking about this in 60 years' time, or probably our children will, who are wherever, if say there's 90% of the world is not racist and there's 10% that is. If you don't allow that 10% to educate themselves, to learn, to be better, to realize the hurt they're causing, and actually jump over the fence into the 90%, which will then hopefully get bigger and the racist percentage gets smaller, you just end up, everybody just stays the same side of the fence, and in 60 years' time we'll have 90% and 10%, and everything will still be the same. So you have to find a way of changing people's approaches, changing people's ways they do it. I think cricket has to have a zero tolerance policy on race. I think it's possibly more than fair that if this guy that was holding his nose and shouting abuse at the Indian spectators yesterday is, after a fair hearing, found guilty of being guilty of that charge, a 2-year ban, a 5-year ban, whatever, from being at cricket matches is possibly quite appropriate.
I was going to say 5-year ban as well. Yeah.
But whether it should be a life ban, maybe is a bit too extreme. But does a racist change his spots? Does somebody, if it's in you talk about people and how they act when they're drunk, you often find, I think, that you find out what somebody's really like when they're drunk, because they suddenly kind of, the honesty buttons get pushed and they become the person that they actually want to be if they were, they prefer to be if they were sober. Some people get more charming, some people get more funny, some people become absolute pillocks.
Josh Clarkson did not pick my last question. You might have to rewrite that question, Josh. But that's not an excuse. Blaming alcohol isn't an excuse, James. No,
I think it maybe uncovers the real person. So if you're trying to use alcohol as the excuse, I think it's a false one, because you're actually probably showing your true colours.
And that's the same with people that on drugs and whatnot as well. Just because you get high, or people are going to say you hate drinking, Lucas, you hate drug. What you do is your business. I'm just saying, if you do that you just can't turn around and say, well, I'm high, I'm unlucid, I'm drunk, I'm intoxicated. That's not really an excuse, James. But that's just my opinion on that kind of stuff.
Whatever substances you're taking or drink you're having, and I like a drink. Sometimes. But you're still responsible for your own actions, regardless of who you are.
Of course.
And you're responsible for what you say, and you're responsible for the hurt you cause other people. And racism hurts other people. Racism, you're basically going at somebody for something they have no power over changing, because you can't change your race, and you're actually proud of. An Indian person should be bloody proud of where they come from. So should a Pakistani person. So should anybody.
Absolutely.
So to actually pick up on them, and if it's and indeed in religion, I'm not actually a religious person, but I got massive respect for anybody that has religious principles and sticks by them. That's fine by me. And if you have a go at people for that, then that's wrong too. So, what annoys me, and you mentioned it before, is when it's almost like playing to the crowd, isn't it? Oh, somebody's laughing, so I'm going to be even louder now. Let's take the mickey out of him because he's an easy target. It's all that kind of crap, isn't it? And it's just wrong.
And it's not just the racial stuff. It's the fat shaming. I know I've seen comments about our favorite domestic bowler, Luke Fletcher, Ollie Robinson, to a degree, with people blaming his weight. That's not very nice, because these players are human after all, James. And
I wish I was in the same shape that Ollie Robinson's in.
Yeah.
Even an unfit Ollie Robinson still.
I was playing 20 overs, bowling 20 overs a day like Ollie Robinson did. But it's not, because people react different ways, and we've seen people, react, harmful ways towards this stuff. And it's also, I don't want to go this directly. I don't want to put you in a bad spot, but it's led to death, James. And it really needs to stop. It really needs to stop this stuff, whether it's racism, fat shaming, putting down a disability.
Azim Rafiq, who came on my podcast, who I talk to regularly, who I've tried to support to some degree over the last 18 months or so. Yeah, he was driven to the brink of suicide because he just, mental health issues and stuff like that. It's important, but being ground down. And I think, from my experience, I'm not an expert now by any means, but I certainly was an expert before Michael Carberry and Azim came on the podcast. But I've read up a lot of stuff on race and stuff and talked to a lot of people since. And my take on it is that it's not necessarily the gravity of a specific incident, because you could, even that thing in this Edgbaston, you could say, well, it's just an idiot. Why are you letting that idiot upset you? But from what talking to people of colour, it's not isolated incidents that get to them. It's the fact that it's an isolated incident added to another isolated incident, added to another isolated incident. That's 3 in the same day. And then they go home that night and somebody shouts at them as they're walking into their house or something. And all of these things, they're like little pebbles that if you add them all together, they make a massive boulder. And that is racism. It's not. It doesn't have to be a massive National Front rally or some sort of riot or something to be racist. It could be the smallest of comments could just upset somebody. It's just wrong. Just respect people. You get idiot white people. You get idiot black people. You get brilliant of both as well. And you call people out for being the idiot. You don't call somebody out for being the colour.
So, and if you are watching the show, you are dealing with depression or on issues, please get help, and please rest assured it's nothing to be ashamed of. We all get to that point. So if you're feeling, please seek help. We'll wrap out. I will get one more question. Pratik said last year Indian players were very reckless, due to which they got COVID positive. Your response to that, James?
Sorry, I missed the question, Lucas.
Pratik said last year also Indian players are very reckless, to which they got COVID positive.
Reckless? Who's that?
Yeah, reckless. Yeah.
Can you put it on the screen? I can't.
There you go.
Last year also, India players were very reckless, due to which they got. I don't know. Okay. Pratik. I mean, he's basically suggesting the behaviour was outside the bubbles and stuff. I don't know.
Yeah, we can't really answer that because we weren't sure if they did leave. We can't be sure with that. But anyway, I did say, James, that we'll do a quick preview of the South African Test series, which I think there is a bit of a gap between Test series. I think the first Test starts on the 17th of August. Now England do play some white ball against India. So what will they do with the squad up in Lords first Test? Same squad?
It's going to be more of the same, isn't it? I can't see there be too many changes. I think there's a round of about 3 county championship games. It is an opportunity for the Ben Comptons, Tom Haineses to score massive centuries, 2 or 3 massive centuries. They'll be hoping to at least kind of say to the selectors, look, we are here, and we do have a claim. But it's also going to be interesting to monitor how Zach Crawley and Lee score for Kent and Durham respectively, because they off the back of that second innings, which was good, but it's certainly not it goes some way to suggesting they can play Test cricket, but it doesn't necessarily convince completely. But if Zach goes back to Kent and suddenly goes bang bang with 200s, then all of a sudden you're starting to think, well, maybe he's running into some form now. So, but I don't think there's going to be too much of a change, to be honest. We're going to have some white ball cricket now, which is going to be exciting. India first, and then South Africa in the white ball, and then into the Test series against South Africa. South Africa are a resurgent team, playing better.
Yes,
got some good players. England are certainly have to play well, but on the basis of what we've seen, I think England will just go into that with huge amounts of confidence, and South Africa will be wary. I would imagine if South Africa win the toss, they will probably want to give England first dibs on the batting and to upset the strategy a bit. Yeah.
Well, we've seen that in white ball series with Australia, who would deliberately bat first on bowling friendly pitches. Sorry, they would bowl first on was it battle bowl? No, because England like chasing, so they'd bat first on ball friendly pitches as a strategy to put off the England off the batsmen that like to chase, because they don't like. Yeah.
I mean, obviously, all these records that have been broken by England, they've batted second in every single one of the 4 Test matches so far this season. So, they can't chase 400 in the final innings if they're batting first. So that might be something South Africa actually seriously think about in terms of how they're going to approach the Test match. And do we give England a different kind of challenge? Can England win batting first now? That's the next question, isn't it? But they've shown they're pretty good at winning batting second, haven't they?
They certainly have all the records. And that concludes our show. The next Test match between England will be on the 17th of August against South Africa at Lord's. Just before I go, just a warning to a Test nation. Australia won the first Test match. Fantastic. Do not bottle the second Test match. I cannot live with the draw series. I can't live these draw series as James outside of Australia. I hate it. So Australia, I don't care if you have to bat. I don't care if Australia have to bat all 5 days to make sure they draw this match. Just get them done. I don't know how you do it. Just do it, please.
Chris Silverwood, if you're watching, wipe the smile off his face. Come on, Sri Lanka.
Yes. I wasn't smiling halfway through that innings, but when Travis Head came on, I was on the moon, James.
There's an entire Test podcast in that, but the pitch, if Travis Head can come on and take 4 for 10, it's turning, isn't it?
It is. Well, not many people. He's a bit like Joe Root. He does bowl a lot of he bowls a lot of overs than you think. He bowls a lot of overs for South Australia.
Good team. Good cricketer, Travis. Good cricketer, and he's a Yorkie as well. He's played for Yorkshire, but he's at Middlesex,
isn't he?
And Rooty's a good bowler. Yeah. Rooty's an undervalued spin bowler, but you wouldn't put them in the Murali Shane Warne class, would you?
No, but I did suggest that maybe they should use Travis Head a lot in India. The series coming up. I'm sure the boss will get involved in that one. I'm sure he's going to turn me off after my F-bomb. But James, thank you very much for joining us. Thank you for all the comments. We literally don't get that many comments, so we've kicked off today, James. That's for sure.
It's been good fun, isn't it? It's always good to get the comments in, and it's always good to speak to you, Lucas. Thank you.
It's been excellent. Thank you. So follow James Butler, the cricket 3 Point Spanish King. And we will all see you. Me and see you at the South African Test match. So thank you and goodbye.